hell is not a metaphor. It's not a scare tactic invented to keep people in line. It's a real place, an eternal reality of unimaginable suffering. Most people who end up there do so simply because they didn't believe it existed. But what if someone was taken there on a guided tour and came back to tell us exactly what it's like? In 1936, a humble Polish nun named Faustina Kowalska claimed an angel took her on a journey through the chasms of hell itself. She was commanded by God to write down everything she saw, so that no one could ever have an excuse. What she witnessed is one of the most terrifying and detailed accounts of the afterlife ever recorded. Before we descend with her, you need to understand who this woman was. Helena Kowalska, later Sister Maria Faustina, wasn't a theologian or a scholar. She was a simple, uneducated nun from a poor family in Poland. This is what makes her testimony so powerful. It wasn't born from complex theology, but from raw, direct experience. One day, as she was praying, she wrote that an angel, her guardian angel, appeared. He didn't speak of heaven or peace. He simply said, "Follow me." He told her she was to witness the abyss, to see the final home of those who reject God. She was terrified, but she was also obedient. She knew this was a divine command. And if you find stories like this compelling and want to explore the mysteries of faith that science can't explain, consider subscribing. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The angel led her away from the world she knew. In her diary, entry 741, she writes, "I was led into the chasms of hell. It is a place of great torture. How awesomely large and extensive it is." The first thing that struck her wasn't fire or demons, but the sheer scale of the place. It wasn't a small cave beneath the earth. It was a vast, sprawling reality. Imagine standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, but instead of rock and river below, there is only an endless, suffocating darkness, a pit from which no light or hope can escape. This was her first glimpse, a space defined by its terrifying emptiness and the weight of eternal loss. It was a place built for a population of the damned. Faustina was then shown the specific tortures, the sources of eternal pain. And the very first, the one that formed the foundation of all other suffering, was not physical. It was the loss of God. This isn't just sadness or disappointment. She describes it as an agony of the soul. Imagine every moment of joy, love, peace, and beauty you've ever felt. Now imagine the source of all that being ripped away from you forever. What's left is not just nothingness. It's a painful, gaping wound that will never heal. It's the torment of a fish gasping for water on dry land. But for eternity, it is the soul's desperate, unending cry for the very thing it chose to reject. This, she wrote, is a suffering that no other can compare to. The second torture was a fire, but not one that burns the flesh. She described it as a fire that is purely spiritual, one that penetrates the soul itself. This is the fire of conscience. Every sin, every selfish act, every person you've hurt, every moment you chose darkness over light, it all plays back. Not like a distant memory, but as a fresh, agonizing reality. You feel the pain you caused others. You see your own ugliness with perfect, horrifying clarity. There are no excuses, no justifications, no one else to blame. It is an eternal confrontation with your own failure, a perpetual remorse that burns hotter than any physical flame. This fire is fueled by your own life, your own choices, and it can never be extinguished. Next, she witnessed the third source of torment, the horrifying realization that their fate is sealed. It will never change. There is no parole. There is no appeal. There is no hope of annihilation. The sentence is eternity. Imagine the worst day of your life, the moment of your deepest regret or pain. Now imagine that feeling being the only thing you will ever feel, forever. The seconds don't tick by. Time itself becomes a flat, endless ocean of the same misery. This knowledge, she explained, crushes the soul. It's the understanding that the choices made in a short lifetime have resulted in a consequence that will outlast the stars. It is the absolute absence of hope, The fourth torture was a constant, terrible darkness. But it wasn't a peaceful, empty black. It was a suffocating, living darkness. Faustina wrote that within this gloom, the devils and the souls of the damned see each other and all the evil, both of others and their own. Think about that. You are trapped in a pitch-black room, but you can see, with perfect clarity, every other monster in the room with you. You see the twisted forms of demons who hate you. You see the despairing faces of other souls who hate you, hate themselves, and hate God. There is no hiding, no closing your eyes. You are forced to perpetually witness the ugliness of sin, both in yourself and in everyone around you. It's a darkness that offers no comfort, only exposure. This leads directly to the fifth torture, the perpetual company of Satan and his demons. In life, evil can be subtle, disguised as something attractive. In hell, the mask is off. The souls are in the constant presence of pure, unadulterated hatred. This isn't a physical torment of whips and chains. It's a psychological and spiritual assault. Imagine being eternally locked in a room with your worst abuser, your most hated enemy, a being whose only desire is your infinite suffering. Every moment is filled with their malice, their mockery, their contempt. The very air crackles with a hatred directed at you, at God, at all of creation. There is no escape from their presence. The sixth torture is the culmination of all the others, a constant, overwhelming despair. It is the final, logical end of a life lived without God. This despair is accompanied by a burning hatred of God. The souls don't repent. They curse. They blaspheme. They scream out in rage at the God they rejected, blaming him for the prison they chose for themselves. Faustina described the sounds of hell as filled with horrible curses, complaints, blasphemies. It is a symphony of hatred and regret, a constant noise of pure spiritual agony. This despair is the final admission of defeat, the soul's eternal scream into a void that will never answer. But then Faustina describes the seventh and perhaps most chillingly personal torture. She wrote, "There are special tortures destined for particular souls. These are the torments of the senses. Each soul undergoes terrible and indescribable sufferings related to the manner in which it has sinned. This is the terrifying justice of hell. The senses you used to offend God become the instruments of your own eternal punishment. The eyes that were filled with lust and envy are now forced to gaze upon monstrous and disgusting sights for eternity. The ears that delighted in gossip and slander now hear only screams and accusations. The tongue that lied and cursed now tastes only bitterness and ash. The body that was an idol of comfort and pleasure now becomes a source of unending, specific pain. Every sin has its price, and in hell, the bill is paid with the very senses that committed the crime." Faustina elaborated on this. She saw that hell was not one homogeneous place of suffering. She wrote, "I saw caverns and pits of torture, where one form of agony differed from another. This suggests a terrifying organization to the abyss. Different sections, different punishments, all tailored to the sins of those imprisoned there. One can only imagine what these different places were. A cavern of absolute isolation for the proud, a pit of burning envy for the jealous, a swamp of filth for the gluttonous." She noted that she would have died from the very sight of these tortures if the omnipotence of God had not supported her. It was a perfectly engineered system of misery, with a specific place for every kind of sinner. After witnessing all of this, Faustina made an observation that is perhaps the most shocking part of her entire testimony. It's a detail that should send a chill down the spine of every person who hears it. She wrote, "I am writing this at the command of God, so that no soul may find an excuse by saying there is no hell, or that nobody has ever been there, or that no one knows what it is like. What I have written is but a pale shadow of the things I saw. But I noticed one thing, that most of the souls there are those who disbelieved that there is a hell. Let that sink in. The majority of inhabitants in this place of ultimate horror were not Satanists or murderers. They were ordinary people who simply decided that hell was a myth. They lived their lives without consequence, assuming it was all just a story. Their disbelief did not change reality. It only left them completely unprepared for it. Why was a simple nun shown these unspeakable things? It wasn't to satisfy some morbid curiosity. It was a mission. God gave her a message of his unfathomable mercy. The vision of hell was not the main point of her life's work. It was the terrifying alternative to the message of divine mercy she was meant to spread. She was shown the consequence of rejecting that mercy. Her diary is filled with prayers for sinners, for their conversion, for them to turn back before it's too late. She wrote, "Today, I was in the chasms of hell, so that souls would not be afraid to approach God." It's a paradox. The most terrifying vision of hell was given to the Apostle of Mercy as the ultimate motivation. It was a warning, a divine wake-up call to a world that was growing comfortable in its disbelief. Such a vision would break anyone. Faustina was no different. The experience marked her for the rest of her life. She was physically ill afterwards. The horror was seared into her memory. Yet, it didn't fill her with despair. It filled her with an urgent, burning love for souls. She understood the stakes. She knew what was on the line with every single human life. She spent the rest of her days offering her own sufferings in union with Christ for the conversion of sinners. She fought, with every prayer and every breath, to pull souls back from the edge of the abyss she had been forced to witness. The vision wasn't just a story she told. It was the fuel for her sainthood. Saint Faustina insisted that her words were only a pale shadow of the reality. The human mind, the human language, is simply not equipped to describe the totality of that suffering. Her account is not meant to paralyze us with fear, but to shock us into action, to make us realize that our choices here, in this short life, echo in eternity. The gates of hell are, in a sense, locked from the inside. Her vision is a key, offered by God, to show us what lies on the other side of that door, so that we might choose a different path. The path of mercy, the path of forgiveness, the path back to God. What part of Saint Faustina's vision do you find the most terrifying? Let us know in the comments below.